everybody, and welcome to the 4-Star Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan DuPont, joined by Andrew Freeman and Nick DeCola. Tig Mullen would have been available this week, but he fell victim to a deadly virus. He got a case of the Steve-O's, is what we're going to call it.
He lost his voice and sounds like Steve-O.
Yeah, but I can't remember. Did he get sick or did he just do karaoke and lost it doing karaoke?
He did karaoke and lost. Yeah. He had a fun night.
Okay, he did have a fun night. It was worth it. I forget, he was singing some Fall Out Boy song. I can't remember which one. But anyway.
I'm sure he killed it.
Oh, I'm sure. It's Tig. Tig has a beautiful voice, if you haven't noticed by listening to us every week. But anyway, we're going to jump right into it.
It was Sugar We're Going Down.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. Throwback to New Year's that Nick wasn't at.
Down. No, I was there.
Oh, that was the one you were at? That was really the one you were at. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. A little bit of an inside joke.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we get too distracted here, because we have a lot to cover. All four teams had news this week. So we're going to start off with the Bears. Jalen Johnson requested a trade. Did not get traded. Bears were looking for, I think it was a late first or early second, or was that right, Andrew?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Something along those lines?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nobody was willing to do it, so he didn't get moved. Bears are still working on an extension, but I did hear a report that he said if Montez Sweat got extended before him, it would be a slap in the face. And lo and behold,
Jordan, who was Montez Sweat?
Lo and behold, the Bears traded for Montez Sweat, an elite pass rusher from the Washington Commanders, who got rid of both Montez Sweat and Chase Young at the deadline. On the first day, it was reported that Montez Sweat was actually very upset at being traded to the Bears, and then 2 days later, he signed a 4-year contract extension. So we all went from, oh my God, this is terrible, Ryan Poles, what are you doing, to, okay, let's see what happens. So, yeah, that's the
It is
fun
amazing.
Bears.
It is amazing how quickly just pulling up a giant Brinks truck full of cash to a dude's house is just smooths over any issues. But no, when the trade was initially reported, it was reported that the Bears weren't able to negotiate with Sweat's camp for an extension or something like that. And when I heard that, and the Bears still gave up their second-round pick for him, which is probably going to be a high second-round pick, I was not a fan. It seemed very risky to give up a high second-round pick for a guy who you're not totally sure. You haven't laid any groundwork for an extension when you're 2-6. So you may have just lit a second-round pick on fire. And, best case scenario, you have to overpay the guy to make this trade not look like a total piece of crap, which they did end up doing. So I don't know. I guess now that they paid him, I'm fine with it. It's good that we got some D-line help, but I'm not a fan of the process.
I'm not a fan of the process either, but the way I saw it framed does make logical sense. We definitely need the D-line help. I saw there are not many D-line prospects in next year's draft.
Johnny Newton, Illinois. Get your 3 technique of the future.
Yeah. Anyway.
I was telling you about Witherspoon last year before the draft, and he's a stud. I'm telling you, Johnny Newton's a dude.
Nick will know his Illinois players.
Nick doesn't.
Now, he can't predict the Illinois schedule worth a damn.
No, I can't.
No.
But he can scout.
I didn't know we were playing Indiana this week.
But no, so the way I saw it framed was there's not a lot of D-line prospects in next year's draft that would be not a reach at whatever pick we wind up getting, which, like you said, we're 2-6. We're going to have a top 5 pick in each round. With that being said, I think they overpaid a little, but I don't think it was egregious. And to do a 4-year, $25 million a year deal, I think he is the 5th highest defensive lineman right now. In a year or two, he's going to be 10th or 15th, and we're all going to forget about it. So once they got the deal done, I don't think it was a bad move. But leading up to not having the deal done, yeah, I was nervous.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at this. Process-wise, we already covered it. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily sound. Philosophically, I don't like the idea as a 2-6 team when you don't know whether your head coach. Well, you do know, but theoretically, you don't know whether your head coach is your head coach moving forward. You don't have your long-term quarterback in the building. philosophically, I don't like the idea of giving away draft capital to bring in players. I'd rather, have that draft capital because you never know. The Bears might fall outside the top 2 picks, and we're looking at, they may need to trade up to get in the Caleb Williams, Drake May stakes. And man, having that extra second round pick might be very helpful for that, right? But in terms of like in a vacuum, I do think like it's an overpay. But here's the thing: the Bears, they're kind of in a position where they kind of have to overpay to bring in talent right now because they've struggled to bring in top flight free agents in free agency. And here's the thing: Montez Sweat was never going to make it to free agency anyway.
That's the other point.
And I saw a lot of people saying that on Twitter, like, "Oh, we could just wait for him to hit free agency." Like, no, that was never going to happen because if the Bears didn't make the trade, Atlanta was going to make the trade for Montez Sweat, and they would have done the same thing, where they would have extended Sweat to a long-term deal. And the whole report about Sweat being upset, that all came out because he's got family and stuff and connections in Atlanta, in Georgia already. So that was more so like he wanted to play for, hometown team, for family and stuff like that. But, as the old saying says, money talks. And
the Brinks truck fixes everything.
Yeah, right. And, Montez Sweat had all the leverage in this, right? Because if Ryan Poles decides to lowball him, Montez Sweat can just say, okay, then you could just give up a second round pick for nothing, you idiot. Like you guys are 2-6. You're a bad team. I don't like, you can tag me, sure, but someone else is going to pay me, at some point. Like either give me what I want or, this is going to look bad for you. And, good thing they got the deal done, I guess. Is it an overpay? Yeah, it's an overpay. Montez Sweat is not on the level of some of the other edge rushers that are in his kind of cluster. When you see some of the top edge contracts right now, like I'm just saying, like there's 2 ways to separate this. Like, again, did they overpay? Yeah. Can they afford to overpay? Also, yes. Right. The Bears have a ton of cap space. They're not going to use all that, I'm sure, next offseason on bringing in players. So if you can get a good player in the building here and, add him to the roster, sure, it's fine. But at the end of the day, it's the way I view it is, I hope the Bears don't see Sweat as the piece on the defensive line and thinking that he's going to fix all their problems. I hope they view him as a piece and they continue to keep on adding there because, I mean, we saw it in this past Saints game, but the defensive line's still not any good, even with Sweat in the building here.
So the last point I want to make on, go for it.
The last point I want to make on Sweat is I think, so we've been talking where we don't expect Eberflus to be back next season, but we're not, there's been talk. It's like, okay, we basically expect the Bears to move on, but we're not entirely sure where Ryan Poles stands. We think he might be back. We think he might not entirely sure. I think him making the Montez Sweat trade and assigning him to this big extension, I think this means Poles is on the hot seat. I don't think he makes this move if he thinks his job is safe.
It's absolutely a desperation move.
I think it's a desperate move to try to get D-line help, which they do just desperately need. And then to sign him to this contract, which is technically an overpay. Again, I'm not complaining about the overpay. I think the overpay is fine. I think if you have a good player in the building and you want to give them a bunch of money, if you have to overpay them a little bit to keep them around, if they're a good player at a premium position, then I think you should go ahead and do that. That's what we call foreshadowing, kids. But but yeah, I think Ryan Poles is on the hot seat. I think his job is in a bit more danger than maybe we thought before. I don't know.
And look, but there's precedence to Bears GMs making desperate moves like this to save their jobs, and George McCaskey's still firing them at the end of the day anyway.
Look at Justin Fields.
Yeah,
he's
Justin
here
Fields,
because of
Ryan Pace
Ryan
made the Justin Fields trade, giving up a future first round pick, and he gets fired a few months, well, not a few months later, but after that season. And then everyone forgets Jerry Angelo traded away Greg Olson, made a huge trade on getting an extra picks for that. And a few months later, he got fired as well by McCaskey, and they brought in Phil Emery, who by the way, Phil Emery also he made the big decision to pay Jay Cutler that.
Yeah, he signed Cutler to that extension.
He got fired the very next season, right? So there's precedence to this, is what I'm saying. Is just because Ryan Poles is making a big move like this, which has ramifications long term, doesn't necessarily mean that he's safe in all this.
Right.
So the last thing I want to say about Sweat, the other angle to look at is as far as overpaying goes. I know Chase Young got a shorter deal for less money, but that thing a lot of people aren't considering is Montez Sweat has taken almost zero time off due to injury. He's actually stayed consistently healthy throughout his career. So hopefully this is somebody that can establish himself as, like you're saying, Andrew, not the piece, but a piece that's going to be there consistent. I mean, look at the offensive line.
Chase Young did not get a new contract. He just got traded for a lower draft pick because he's a 1-year rental.
Yeah. That's what it was. My apologies.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So just to make that clear.
Thank you.
And yes, Chase Young is the better player when he's on the field and healthy. But the problem with Chase Young has always been, can he be on the field healthy?
And there are rumors of other issues there with Chase Young. It's not just the availability thing, but yeah, Young is the more talented player. He has the better draft pedigree, obviously. But I mean, you're bringing in Sweat and paying him long term because he's reliable and you feel like he can be, again, he's a more reliable player, right? And that's a big part of this as well.
And that's been a big issue for both sides of the ball for a while now. Moving on to the actual game that happened. Once again, I was working all day and I didn't get a chance to watch it, but from what I understand, I didn't miss much. Bears lost 24-17. Tyson Bagent threw 4 picks. Clearly not the solution. Hopefully this puts the QB controversy that really shouldn't have been there in the first place to bed once and for all. Burn it all to the ground, burn it with fire, run away, scorched earth, start over. Do we need to add anything else?
I think that we don't need to add much. I will say, if we're going to take one positive from the game, first of all, Jordan, no, this is not going to end the QB controversy. This is Chicago. Like we have QB controversies in our sleep. Like it's going to continue. It's going to continue. If it's not this, it's going to be like, I don't know, Peterman's going to come in and he's going to have a couple nice throws. Like, oh, maybe we need to take a look at Peterman next. The one positive I'll take away is that I thought Jack Sanborn had a really nice game, and which makes me question why we spent $24 million a year on linebackers when we had Jack Sanborn in the building. But that's another thing. I don't know. Andrew, you got a
Sanborn guy.
You got
I have to say it. Cole Kmet had a really nice game today.
He did have a good game.
Really nice plays. And as the designated Cole Kmet hater on this podcast, I have to eat my crow. He's been, wasn't a fan of the draft pick at the time when they made it. I wasn't a huge fan of the extension, although I acknowledge the contract's not bad when you compare it to other tight ends in the position. I think a lot of Cole Kmet's production this year is inflated just because of his role in the offense and the way that they kind of use him. I think a lot of tight ends can do what he does. But with that said, he made an awesome catch today for a touchdown. Type of plays that we normally don't see Cole Kmet make, but if he can, make those types of plays, he'll be well worth the investment that they've made in him from a long-term standpoint. And bigger picture for his season, he's just been a very reliable target in the passing game, even though he's not anything spectacular. Again, he is what he is. He's not anything, special or anything to write home about, but he's been a reliably productive player this season, which in the context of the rest of this Bears team, he's one of the few things I guess you can say that is actually reliable, because the rest of this team, you don't know what you're getting any given day. Like, the pass rush is going to suck, which it did in this game once again. The defense is going to play soft coverages on third downs and give up long third down conversions, which they did time and time again in this game. The offensive line's been up and down because you never know who's going to be healthy on the offensive line. You never know what you're going to get out of the quarterback because Justin Fields is a roller coaster, and then he's out injured. And Tyson Bagent's a rookie; he's a roller coaster, And then this coaching staff, the coaching staff sucks. Yeah, that's pretty reliable right there. But
Cole Kmet had a good game. He's a young player. He's had a good game, and
so
it just goes to show you that you draft a guy, he shows himself to be a reliable player, you reward him with an extension, a contract extension that maybe it's a little bit more money than some people on Twitter would have liked, but it's not a drastic overpay. He got a lot of cap space, and he comes back. It's good for locker room morale. I'm sorry. We need to circle back. Extend Jalen Johnson. What are you doing? Okay. All right.
To
I
add
would like
some.
to point out,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I have Cole Kmet on one of my 3 fantasy teams.
No one cares about your fantasy team, Jordan.
I care about my fantasy team, and this is relevant. Cole Kmet actually going into this game before he put up 23.5 points in this league was the number 7 ranked tight end. Just saying. He's had a string of pretty good games. And again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Andrew mentioned that his role in this offense isn't a little inflated just because of how they're using him. But he's been a steady producer for this team pretty much the whole year, no matter who's throwing the ball to him. So shout out Cole Kmet.
Yeah, circling back to Jalen Johnson, like Nick said, I mean, look, the thing with Johnson is that, it comes down to health, right? And cornerback's one of those weird positions where your production is going to vary by year. But just to put into context how awesome Jalen Johnson has been in coverage this year, going into the Saints game, PFF has him down with a 37.3 passer rating allowed, which I think is tops in the NFL. So he has been as locked down as it gets this year. It's a little bit of an outlier compared to the rest of his career, but I agree. I think he's he's not an elite corner, but he's kind of in that second tier of really, really good number 1 corners that you want to have on your team. I think
this could do a lot worse than Jalen.
Yeah,
Johnson.
I think this should have been done. This should have been done in August, I think, or even before then, right? I think Ryan Poles should have been way more proactive about getting an extension done. And if you would have gotten this done earlier, you probably would have gotten him down for a lesser number, which is the benefit of doing these extensions early. So it annoys me that we're waiting this long to do this. They should have either traded him at the deadline or try to get this extension done earlier. And now we're kind of in a situation where they're going to have to tag him next year to keep him around.
And he's going to hold out.
Yeah, he's going to hold out. It's just going to create more drama, and we'll see what happens from there. But yeah, I'd like to see a Jalen Johnson extension as well. I don't know if we're going to get it though.
Well, I think that should about do it on the Bears. Little, as Nick mentioned, foreshadowing. For some godforsaken reason, the Bears and the Panthers are the Thursday night football game this week. So do with that information what you will. It's going to be
Super Bowl. It's our Super Bowl.
It's going to be a shit show. But anyway, we'll get moving on here. Next up, we have. Do we want to do the Bulls or the Blackhawks? Should we stick with misery?
Let's get
or
the Bulls over with.
Okay, I was going to say do the Bulls. Get the Bulls over with. As you can see behind Andrew, he's got the mid-season or in-season tournament, Bulls court, which is just.
Yeah. I'll be getting to them later, my 180, so I don't want to ruin it too much right now, but they're pretty awful. But I mean, yeah, the Bulls had a pretty rough week. I mean, I'm looking at Jordan. You get their schedule in front. I don't even want to look at their schedule results right now. I mean,
I know it's been a whole lot of bad lately.
Yeah, they've lost 3 games in the last week. They lost to the Mavericks, they lost to the Nets, and they lost to the Nuggets actually yesterday. I think those are the last 3 games since we last recorded. I mean, what can you even say about this team? They're just really bad in all phases here. Losing to the Mavericks in a pretty convincing game. They lost to the Nets in the first game of the in-season tournament, which no one gives a crap about, by the way. It's the dumbest possible thing. They lost in
new court.
I guess you could call it a heartbreaker to the Nets by 2 points. And then they got absolutely just demolished by the Nuggets. They kept it close for the first half, and then in the second half, Nikola Jokic and that group actually just decided to start trying, and they won the game by 20, which is just the way these games go, basically. I mean, this team it's very predictable the way this is worked out. I think there's a great piece by, I think it was Kirk Goldsberry, I think at ESPN, or someone at ESPN kind of said this, but everybody in the NBA knows that the Bulls should be rebuilding except the Bulls, is what they said. And you can kind of see that in the results of the courts so far this year. They're 2-5. And just to put their ineptitude into kind of perspective here, I guess, I'm pulling it up right now. So their offensive rating, which measures your efficiency on offense for 100 possessions in the games, they are 25th in offensive rating this year, averaging 106.9 points per 100 possessions. Defensively, they are 24th at 115.8. So they're giving up 115.8 points per 100 possessions. When you factor all that in, they have a net rating of negative 8.9 points per 100 possessions, which is 28th in the NBA, which is to say very bad on a lot of levels. So they can't score. They can't defend right now. They're shooting, I think, the lowest amount of threes per game of any team, or if it's not the lowest amount, it's certainly up there. Yeah, they're shooting 26 amount of three-point shots per game, and they're 28th in three-point efficiency. So they don't shoot a lot of threes. They're bad at shooting threes, which is like in today's NBA, like the most important shot. Like you should be trying to emphasize having shooters, and they don't have any shooters. Instead, they're chucking up a bunch of mid-range shots by DeMar DeRozan, who can't make them this season. I think he's starting to hit the wall as a player.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat, and I'm pretty sure you're the one who shared it, that DeMar DeRozan is like has a negative, like his plus minus is like negative 55 or something like that. And the next next worst is like, yeah, next worst is like 30 points better.
So let's look at the team. Let's look at the mid three, as we call them: DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Nikola Vucevic. This is what Ricky O'Donnell at Bloggable has coined these guys, or SB Nation. So DeMar DeRozan, his on-court plus minus is negative 16.3 per 100 possessions, and his plus minus compared to when he's on the court compared to when he's off the court is negative 25.1 points per 100 possessions. So that means that the Bulls are 25 points better when DeMar DeRozan is sitting on the bench compared to when he's actually on the basketball courts. And he's supposed to be your second best player. Zach LaVine, he is a negative 11.4 points per 100 possessions when he's on the court, negative 7.9 points per 100 possessions compared to when he's on the court compared to when he's off the court. So again, the Bulls are nearly 8 points per 100 possessions better when Zach LaVine has his ass on the bench compared to when he's on the basketball court. And the same thing goes for Vucevic, which is very similar to Zach LaVine. Look, I mean, the story of it is that these three just don't work together as a trio. Like they don't fit. It hasn't fit since they've been here in Chicago. And it makes a lot of sense. They're all offensive first guys who need the ball in their hands to be successful, and they don't create or make things easier for other players on the team. It's really simple as that. And that's the main issue right now. Neither of these guys are two-way players, which you need in today's NBA. You need to have at least one of your stars be a two-way guy that can make an impact on defense, and none of them can do it. And I think the biggest reason why this team is just struggling so far is that LaVine has just been, especially LaVine and DeMar DeRozan especially, have been bad, but LaVine has been, outside of his 51-point outburst against Detroit, which they still lost in that game, by the way. He's averaging 22 points per game, which is down from his typical standards. He's shooting 40% from the field, 31% from three so far in 7 attempts per game, only 2 assists per game with 2.5 turnovers. So he has more turnovers than assists so far this season, which is not good. His true shooting percentage, looking it up right here, is 53%, which is well below league average. He's got a 14.3 PER, negative 3.2 box plus minus. Like, he's just, everything indicates that LaVine is just awful.
All of it's bad
right now. It's all bad. And I mean, I could go on, but all we need to really know is that this Bulls team sucks and their star players suck and none of it's working. And they should have rebuilt this thing and blown it up in the offseason. But of course, they don't want to do that. They're too cheap to go into the luxury tax, and they're too delusional, or I guess too money hungry, wanting to get into the play-in round to recognize that it's time to move on and rebuild. But that's the Bulls in a nutshell. They just aspire for mediocrity, and that's what you're going to get.
All right, Andrew, it's time.
Oh boy.
One unironically positive thing about the Chicago Bulls
right now, not historical.
No,
right now.
The 2020, what year? 2023, 2024 Chicago Bulls.
Let's talk about Ayo DeSumo.
Yeah, let's go.
Knicks guy.
Let's go.
So fun fact.
ILL.
Do you want to know
Shut
who
up.
the only player is on the Bulls that has a positive plus minus?
Io.
I'm gonna
It's
guess
Io. Everyone else is in the negative except Io, who is plus 13 per 100
Holy
possessions
cow.
when he's on the
Well-
court compared to when he's off the court. Now, he's only played in 56 minutes in 7 games, so he's not getting a lot of playing
I was gonna
time.
say he's probably playing like 5 minutes.
Oh,
a game
no,
or
he's
something
not
like
playing
that.
a ton. And it's probably all
Yeah.
of it. Most of it's probably garbage time, basically.
Yeah.
But when he's on the floor, he's doing some nice things. In terms of like what he's actually doing from a statistical standpoint, like he's got a 16.6 PER, which is his highest, 2.1 box plus minus. A lot of it is his offense production has improved. Nearly 60% true shooting, which is very nice. In terms of what he's giving you per game production, like shooting 45% from 3, which is very good. He's giving you a good defense. He's not, the offensive player or playmaker, I should say, that you want from your point guard, but as a versatile guard defender, I think he's giving you some nice things. So I'll shout him out unironically. And I think if it weren't for the fact that their guard rotation right now is really crowded with Javon Carter and Alex Caruso and Levine and all those guys and Kobe White, I think he should be getting probably more playing time because like Kobe White's been it's been a struggle for him this year. And yeah, so I'd say Io's been like the one, I guess, somewhat bright spot, but I mean, that's not saying much.
I like it. I'll allow it.
Well, looking ahead here, coming up, the Bulls play host to the three home games in a row. So all at home against the Jazz tomorrow, host the Suns on Wednesday, which they're going to get destroyed, and host the Pistons on Sunday. So without further ado, we'll go to some happy time here to talk about the Blackhawks.
Well, okay, all right. But before we get into the happy time, there's some news that broke today. It's not hockey related news. It is
see this in the notes. Oh god.
Oh yeah, no, I added it last minute. It is somewhat of a serious note. So it came out today that an ex-Blackhawks player filed a lawsuit against the Blackhawks in relation to the sexual assault scandal from former video coach Brad Aldrich. This, if you remember, was the whole Kyle Beach thing with the 2010 team. I'm not going to rehash the details because I really don't want to. It's just very uncomfortable, but the news broke. Now, I want to clarify, this is not a new allegation. This was a player that was mentioned in the original Jenner and Block report. I believe it was called, the firm that did the report. So like they knew this was coming. Like it's just at the point, whoever this player at the moment is anonymous, has not come forward publicly. He's now filed a lawsuit against the organization. So I don't expect any punishment from the NHL because, again, they knew about it. This was factored into the original punishment and everything that happened there. Yeah. So the Hawks will probably settle with him. I just felt like I needed to mention that because it was a story that came out today. All right. Back to actual hockey. Unless you guys have anything to add. I can't imagine you do. No.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it sucks that
it sucks that we have to talk about it again,
sucks
but
that,
we have to.
Yeah, it's really, well, I mean, I guess I don't want to phrase it too much like that. It sucks that it happened, first of all.
It sucks that it happened, yeah.
We're still dealing with the fallout of that, and it's an important discussion to have because you can't have anything like that going on in any organization, let alone your prominent sports organization. But yeah, I guess that's probably the only thing I got to say. It's just, the fallout of it. I mean, it's still something that hangs over the shoulders of this organization still.
Yeah. Anyway, back to what the team actually did. The present day Blackhawks. Monday, while we were recording, I believe when we signed off, it was 3-1 Arizona. That game went off the rails very quickly. Ended up an 8-1 loss in a game that, like we were talking about with the gauntlet, the whole really tough start to the year. Like, this was the reprieve, and this was supposed to be the game that you were going to go in there, you were going to compete with a team of somewhat similar skill level, and they just got absolutely demolished. It was bad all around. Soderblom didn't have a great night in net. He ended up getting pulled for Mrazek, but Mrazek had to warm up, and actually was was really like not funny, but by the time they decided to pull Soderblom for Mrazek, Mrazek had to warm up, and Soderblom still ate like 3 additional goals on top of that, just because they didn't want to put Mrazek in gold. So just it's just when it rains it pours, and it was really tough because you have that terrible loss on Monday night, and you have that terrible loss Monday night, and then they didn't have a game again until literally last night on Saturday, so they had to sit and stew with that loss for 5 days. Now I think it was Nick Foligno talking to the press. He said that he thought it was a good thing because they thought that it's like, okay, we have to sit with this feeling for 5 days, and we don't want that feeling again. And it'll make them more motivated to come out and play well in their next game. And I could say they definitely did that against the Florida Panthers at home, Eastern Conference champs from last year. The Hawks won 5-2. They went out to a 4-0 lead. They scored 3 goals in the first period. Goals from Nick Foligno, Zaitsev, Taylor Hall, who made his return off of IR. He's back. And Connor Bedard with a fantastic snapshot, fantastic celebration. And then I don't know who got entertained. And that's only 4 players. I don't know who got the empty netter. I didn't write it down, but it was just an empty netter. So yeah, Taylor Hall came back off IR. That's great news. What I found interesting was that Taylor Hall didn't come back and play on Bedard's line. Bedard's line was still him, Kurashev, and Nick Foligno, which I can understand why, because that line performed really well. Was it last week against Vegas? So I understand sticking them together and also, spreading out your scoring a little bit. So Hall played with, who was it? Tyler Johnson and Jason Dickinson. Jason Dickinson was center in that line. And that line looked pretty good. I mean, Taylor Hall, he comes back, he scores a goal. Taylor Hall also had another goal tonight. I'm not going to talk too much about the game that happened tonight because it just ended, but the Blackhawks lost 4-2. And I'll be honest, I thought the game started at 7. It started at 6, so I missed the entire first period of that game. But another interesting note from the Florida game is that Lucas Reichel got moved back to wing. We've been talking about it for a few weeks now. They tried to move him to center this year, and we were talking last week, he hadn't recorded a single point. Well, he finally got an assist on the Zaitsev goal, and he just looked a lot better. He looked a lot more confident out there. I think just being able to play wing, not having to focus as much on defense, really helped them out. But yeah, they really came out to play. They outshot Florida 14-6 in the first period, again going up 3-0. Florida came back though. They definitely threw a bunch of shots on net. The Hawks were outshot 34-10 the rest of the way, but they were able to hold on mostly because Peter Mrazek,
he has stepped up huge this year.
I was not expecting much from Peter Mrazek this year. He's got a 923 save percentage this year, which is middle of the road, but that's better than I thought I was getting, with Peter Mrazek, and especially when you got a young defensive core, 3 rookie defensemen. You're going to be seeing a lot of shots. So the fact that he made some really nice saves, he's just been great this year. So really nice win. Again, I don't have much to say about it. I wasn't able to watch much of the game tonight. I know they lost 4-2 with the 4th goal for New Jersey being an empty netter at the very end, but that's all I know about it right now. Oh, I do also know Alex Vlasic is back. He is out of concussion protocol. He made his return back in the lineup tonight. So it's good to have him back. Other than that, that's all I got for the Hawks.
Pretty solid rundown. Nothing too crazy happening. Still kind of
everything
what we were expecting. Looks like coming up, oh God, we're at the Lightning and on Thursday and at Florida.
You thought we were done with the hard teams. You thought we were done. We're not.
Yeah, the next quote unquote easy team we have is the Predators on the 18th.
Yeah.
God, the schedule makers hate us.
It's okay.
Well, getting wrapped up here. If you guys don't mind, I'm just going to run through this Cubs news real quick. Not really much that warrants discussion, I don't think. We can dig into it a little bit.
We can talk Stroman a little bit because that was a bit of a surprise.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll run through it and then we can dig in there. Cody Bellinger declined his mutual option, which was expected, especially after the season he had. We all knew he was going to test the free agency market. Options were picked up on both Jan Gomes and Kyle Hendricks, which, yay, 2 thumbs up. Gomes had a career year really behind the plate, or at the plate and behind the plate, was very solid. Kyle Hendricks, again, at this point in his career, just a solid back of the rotation arm. Nice little surprise. For the first time in franchise history, the Cubs had 3 Gold Glove winners with Ian Happ, Dansby Swanson, and Nico Horner. Happ was only really the one surprise, I'd say, and he wasn't even that much of a surprise. Left field was very, very weak this year, but Dansby and Nico had incredible seasons. The one thing that did kind of catch us by surprise that Nick mentioned, Marcus Stroman opted out of his deal after a second half. I don't know what he's thinking. I mean, he completely collapsed in the second half of the season, had the injury, and yet he's going to go out and test the free agency market, which fine. That's $21 million off the books for next year for us to go after some additional starting pitching. But I am surprised by it. I think we were
the only thing that I could think of is that he might take less per year for like a longer term contract. So maybe like a 3-year, something like that. So maybe it's just like it works out to the same, like more money overall than next year. But yeah, I really don't understand. I mean, granted, I'm a little biased. I'd rather see Marcus Stroman pitch for the Cubs. And it's not like he can't come back on a rework deal, but I don't know. I really thought he was going to take his option. Especially after the injury and like the rough second half he had. It did catch me by surprise. But
yeah, especially at his age.
Yeah. Well, and he's got a history of pissing off I think the Cubs are the only team that he's ever played on that he hasn't pissed off in some capacity. So that's another surprise. But again,
on the flip side, the silver lining here is that there is an additional $21 million that has suddenly been made available to spend on the free agent market.
And I did basically spend on Shohei.
I did see a clickbaity headline.
Bellinger, Soto.
I did see a clickbaity headline from Bleacher Nation, and that's not a dig at them. I mean, they're a blog site; they got to do what they got to do.
We got to get better at clickbait.
We do, but I did see a clickbaity headline from them saying that there are some, and I didn't read the article; I didn't have time, but there are some GMs in the league that think the Cubs are a very solid sleeper candidate to land Shohei. So.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Because the Cubs are a big market team, as long as they act like a big market team, they should be in the conversation for all of these big free agents.
I mean, they shouldn't be a sleeper team. They should be one of the
front runners.
Yeah, because they're the Cubs,
and they're opening up a window for contention right now. I mean, this is a team on the upswing, that team that is very closer than I think even they thought they were going to be. At this time last year.
Down. Yeah. Hands down. I mean, like we said in our season wrap up, we went into the season hoping we'd have meaningful baseball in September, and we left the season being upset that we didn't have more meaningful baseball in September, because we were in playoff contention really until we didn't get eliminated until the second half of the season.
Yeah.
So yeah,
they met our expectations. They just did it in the most soul crushing way possible.
I'd say they exceeded them a little bit, but it was still soul crushing. I'd agree with you on that. But.
Yeah, I mean, circle this back to Stroman before we move on, I guess. But I hope he's not getting bad advice from his agent in this, because, like Nick said, he might be trying to get more of a long-term deal and might even take a little bit less to do so. But I don't know, $21 million at his age with his performance last year with the injury history. I don't know. I think for his business interests, I think he was probably better off just keeping the option and then seeing what happened, because it's 21 guaranteed right there.
Especially because if you're pitching for like your next big contract, I mean, he's a ground ball pitcher. You have 2 Gold Glovers in your middle infield. You've got a great defense behind you. I feel like just getting paid $21 million to pitch in front of this Cubs defense in a contract year in a ballpark that absolutely loves you. You know, like
Yeah.
Wrigley loves Marcus
Yeah, I
Stroman,
don't-
Cubs love Marcus Stroman. I think Cubs
I mean,
fans
he may
love
see it as
Marcus
he's
Stroman.
got.
I
Yeah.
I
He
mean,
might see it as like
granted,
he's got one
know,
contract left
maybe
and try to do
See.
that, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's many places he can go that'll put him in a better situation than he was in already. So, I mean, hey, maybe that just like Nick's saying, he's looking for a 3-year deal with a little less AAV, but more overall. This is his last hit at a real contract. We'll see what happens. I would not be opposed to him coming back if it made sense and we were able to land one or both of Shohei and Belly, but time will tell. And I guess realistically, you know, if the Ricketts are willing to spend over the luxury tax, you can get all three and, you know, who cares? So, and it sounded like that they're going to be willing to spend this offseason. But again, time will tell. This is the Cubs. We've thought lots of things before and none of them have come true. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We ready to move on to 180s?
Let's do it.
Let's try. Yeah.
All right, Andrew. Andrew said his background is foreshadowing for his, so I'll let you knock that out.
Yeah, I'm so for
This
those
is another one.
Go ahead.
This is another one of those where if you're not watching on YouTube, it's not going to make a ton of sense. But
Oh
you know,
yeah,
this is why you follow us on
Keep
YouTube.
forgetting about that.
Yeah, I mentioned it. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, for those of you that are listening and not watching, you know, we have different backgrounds. Nick actually moved into a new apartment and has a very nice little display of bobbleheads and old little league hats and a couple of gloves.
Yep.
I just rock with, because I honestly record at my dining room table in my apartment. But anyway, I have a background that's Wrigley Field, and normally Andrew and Tig follow suit with me, but Andrew has changed it up for his background to be the Bulls in-season tournament court, which is very, very red if you have not seen it yet. So, Andrew, I will officially turn the floor over to you.
Yeah. So again, for those who are not watching, in the background behind me, I got the Bulls in-season tournament court. You get a little full view right here as I move my head around. And basically, I mean, look, the topic of my 180 is has to do with the in-season tournament. Like, it's awful. Everyone I talk to when it comes to this has no idea what the rules are, have no idea what's going on. And from what it sounds like, the players don't really buy into this garbage anyway. And I just think we're gonna get a really bad product from it. But hey, that's just me. But I wanted to talk about the court designs for this in-season tournament, because what the NBA decided to do is that all the NBA teams have their own distinct court design for in-season tournament games, so that you know, as the viewer, that this game isn't just a normal regular season game, it's an in-season tournament game as well. So it really adds to the intensity of it. And you can really see in the background here that this court design right here really adds to the intensity when you just have random colors all over the place here, and you cannot tell what is actually going on here. Like, some of these court designs are awful. As we see here, the Bulls here, right? This looks like straight out of The Shining. You know that scene in The Shining where all the blood is coming down the hallway? This is exactly what it looks like right here on the Bulls court. It's just all red. It looks like there's just blood spread all over the place here. It's really ugly. I don't like it. It's not intimidating whatsoever. And let's just get to some of these other ones here, because some of these are truly gems. Let's get to the Oklahoma City Thunder, which I don't think is the worst. Here, I'll move around here a little bit. It's not the worst one. I mean, it's, you know, you have some shades of light blue, some dark blue in there. They kind of all follow the same similar design with the stupid center court thing that they got going on in the middle of the court. It's not the best, but I think we all agree. We talked about this before the podcast. We all agree that our least favorite's the Pacers. Look at this crap. Holy cow. You got light blue on the side, yellow, like bright neon yellow in the center here. And then you got this stupid design at center court. Like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I think that's the NBA Cup where it's supposed to be. I don't know. It looks stupid. Just the best way I can describe it is that these court designs, they look like you take a Gen Z kid on NBA 2K, loaded up on Adderall, and he's just going to town on making these wacky court designs as wacky as possible. And this is the result you get. It looks straight out of a 2K game. And it's just, I don't think this is the type of thing we want for the NBA here. I hate to be like to come off as like an old head here when it comes to this, and I'm all for new things and new court ideas and stuff. But I mean, come on, like some of these are just like this is such a gimmick, and when you do these stupid court designs, you just further, I don't know, reinforce that this entire in-season tournament thing is a desperate gimmick that isn't adding anything to the product. If anything, it just makes the product look more like a joke. And just makes, I don't think it makes the regular season any more interesting or entertaining. I don't know. It just further adds, in my opinion, to the stupidity of this whole thing. And I think the NBA jumped the shark with this for all the reasons I said. The in-season tournament, the court designs, it's all bad right now. And I mean, the Bulls looking like a dirty tampon just went on the court. Certainly doesn't help matters here either. So yeah, those are my thoughts on these crappy court designs here. And I hate that we have to get more games of these with my eyes just bleeding watching them on the screen. I just can't stand it. It makes it really unenjoyable to watch a game. And that's I'll leave it at that.
Well, I'm gonna transition to also ripping on the NBA, but for a different reason. The NBA likes to do the city edition uniforms, and I don't know if you guys have seen all of them. Some of them are bad, man, including the Bulls. The Bulls is terrible, and I get it. You know, I know a few years ago the MLB did the Players Weekend jerseys, and they didn't look great, but the fact that the players got to have their own nicknames on the back was a really unique thing. I know I really wish that I would have scooped up an El Mago Javi Baez jersey. I can't remember. There were some other really, really good ones from that team. Honestly, the City Connect uniforms for baseball so far, at least for the Chicago teams, I think the Wrigleyville with the navy blue and the Chicago Star in the C, I think that is a tight-looking uniform. The Sox with the black, with the white pinstripes looks really cool. Chicago nailed that. And overall, I think City Connect has been a good thing for the MLB. However, I forgot I have to share my screen. Bear with me for a second. And for those of you that are listening, you'll just have to listen to some descriptions here. But a lot of these are so bad. We'll start with the obvious. The Bulls. Are you guys seeing it right now?
Yeah,
Andrew.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll start with the obvious. That's the Bulls. I'm trying to zoom in a little here. I get what they were kind of going for here. So the Bulls literally just have, it's a black jersey with red piping, except for on the left side, which doesn't make sense. The numbers are red and slightly off center on the front, and it's got Chicago going down the right side in thin letters. Again, I get what they were going for, kind of similar to the Chicago Theater sign. The execution is just god awful. That is such a boring jersey. The Lakers, if you will look to the bottom left of your screen here, I have no idea why it says Los Angeles the way it does. It looks like a freaking triangle. It's dumb. Pacers, which, we were just talking about their court design. It looks like a cartoon, just like their court design. Nets looks like it was put together, made out of blocks by a 3-year-old. Detroit's just kind of boring. San Francisco, I don't know why you have the word San Francisco going in like a curly Q across the front. New York for the Knicks basically looks like their normal jersey from a few years ago, but instead of saying New York one time, it says it twice, but in like 3D glasses fashion. Have no idea why Toronto's gold. And then I think the other really egregious one is Philly here, where it says City of in really tiny cursive, brotherly in big red and white, and then love underneath in really tiny cursive again. They're not all bad. I do want to shout out, excuse me, the Bucks and the Timberwolves actually, I think, look really clean. Minnesota's got kind of a mountainy, foresty looking thing to it. I know there's not really mountains in Minnesota, but I think it looks cool. The Bucks look kind of retro with the cream going across the middle. And I think the winner here would have to be the Jazz. Basically, think of the Colorado Rockies City Connect baseball uniforms where it looks like the license plate with the mountains, but instead of green and white, the Jazz did it with purple, which, again, kind of ironic because, it's similar to the Rockies, but Colorado and Utah. But anyway.
Can I add something real quick?
Yeah. Do you want me to pull it back up? Or?
Yeah, pull it back up. Utah's definitely wins the cake here. What makes it great is that it's kind of like a modernized version of their 90s uniforms. So if we remember their 90s uniforms, they had the purple mountain design as well. I don't know. I just really think we should get back to, instead of these doing these stupid, some of these are just really bad, by the way, but instead of these doing really simplistic or just, fake artsy types of things, like why can't we just go back to like retro uniforms for some of these editions? Like the retro uniforms are the best, especially like for like Utah has great retro uniforms. The Hawks are pretty interesting. Like for the Thunder, I mean, I know you kind of can't do it because you're not in Seattle anymore, but like you could do like a Seattle Supersonics
here's the thing,
retro.
Here's the thing, Andrew. A lot of people already have those jerseys, and these are new jerseys that they could sell for more money.
That's true. That's true. Or like a Toronto Raptors retro, like that's the
oh my god, yeah,
Vince Carter days. Like, come on,
yeah.
Come on, now you're speaking to me.
Hey, honestly, just make to me. Oh, I removed Andrew and not my shared screen. I'm so sorry. To me, the Bulls black alternates, either with or without the pinstripes, are some of the cleanest NBA uniforms ever.
Yep.
And they have not done a version of that in years. It doesn't make sense. It just, do a little modern tweak on stuff like that. You don't need to create this whole new cash grab design that looks like crap every single year. Again, it makes it like a joke. I think and this is going to be the end of my rant here, but I think out of the 4 major professional sports leagues in the United States of America, the National Basketball Association is far and away the biggest joke out of all of them.
Agreed.
Make your turn.
Okay, well, I'm gonna give some respect to my podcast listeners and not do a 180 that requires you to look at a screen. I'm gonna take this opportunity to say goodbye to somebody that has brought us a lot of joy over the past couple of years, Mr. Brian Ferentz, offensive coordinator at Iowa. So if you didn't hear, it was announced that Brian Ferentz, after the Iowa's bowl game this year, they're already bowl eligible. He is going to resign from his position as offensive coordinator. And really, I think it's just sad. I think I really miss. I'm gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss him. Last year, Iowa scored 17.7 points per game, which is good for 123rd out of 131 FBS teams. So not great. This year it was really funny. So they put a goal in his contract that the offense needed to score 25 points a game for him to possibly keep his job. It'd be just like one of the factors of, whether or not, they'd bring him back. They are currently on pace 18.4 points per game at the moment. They need to score about 40 points a game the rest of the way. Not that it matters, but they would need to score 40 points the rest of the way to hit that mark. And I'm just going to miss Iowa playing the most hilarious brand of football possible, where you have this awesome defense where they are at more of a threat to score than when their defense is on the field than when their offense is on the field. And I just really like that. So I'm going to miss it. Thank you, Brian Ferentz, for the memories. Okay, way to bust out the Sarah McLachlan in like the worst sound quality possible. I tried. My podcast listeners, I tried. Jordan does not respect you. If you're not watching on YouTube, Jordan does not respect you and he wants you to have the worst time possible. God.
Literally, you started saying, like, I'm dedicating this to Brian Ferentz, and I literally listened to a minute of that song with my microphone on mute, waiting for the line for one of the ASPCA commercials. Use it. I had to. I'm so sorry. Oh, my God. It's been a long day. I needed that. I'm awake now.
Okay. Okay. Wrap up the show and take a nap, buddy.
Oh, man. Once again, before we get ourselves into any more trouble, thank you all so much for watching. This has been the 4-Star Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan DuPont. You can find the show on Twitter at 4starpodchi. Check out our website 4starpodchi.com. You can follow Nick on Twitter at Endicola21, Todd, who is not here, at TMMullen007. They're both pretty funny. Andrew is at AJ Freeman25. You can check out his other work on the Bear Report for 247sports.com, where he does his tracking the trenches to keep track of all the line play from all the Bears games, and the Picks for Polls podcast. If you like this and for some reason thought me playing the ASPCA music talking about Brian Ferentz was funny, you should like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff.
You should also like, comment, share, and subscribe if you didn't think it was funny, because I think there's going to be way more of those people.
That's fair. But anyway, like, comment, share, subscribe. Check us out. We'll be back again next week, ranting and raving. Make sure you have a good one.